You know, there's a version of this story that's pure brand strategy gospel. 30 years ago, an album came out that only ever peaked at number 23 on the Billboard chart. 18 weeks quiet, then gone. Reasonable Doubt by Jay-Z. Remember when he had the two dots over the Y? And this summer, the man who made it didn't re-release it. He didn't drop a deluxe edition with 2 bonus tracks and call it a day. No, he built a world around it, a museum you can walk through, a library card that makes you a citizen of the Jay-Z mythology, a reading list out of the projects he came from. The streets of New York turned into the album's liner notes. It is, on the architecture alone, one of the most sophisticated things anyone in music has done in years. And he left one door open, and that one open door is quietly cracking the whole cathedral. Now, I want to be precise in this episode because this one's easy to get wrong in both directions. If you only praise the rollout, you miss the contradiction sitting in the middle of it. And if you only attack the contradiction, you miss the fact that the thing he built is genuinely brilliant. And you can't understand why the crack matters until you understand how beautiful the building truly is. So we're going to do both. First, I'm going to show you the world Jay-Z built as a strategist, not a fan. Then I'm going to show you the door, then the pattern behind the door, and then the part almost nobody wants to brand strategize out loud. And by the end, I'm going to give you the single law that explains all of it, the one that applies to his brand, my brand, and yours. Rock Nation didn't call this an anniversary. They called it 96 and Forever, a year-long program to commemorate Jay-Z's bodies of work as a cultural archive. Now sit with that word, archive, not a catalog, not a discography. An archive, that's something that you preserve, something you walk through, something curated. That word choice is the whole strategy in miniature. Here's what they actually built. From June 25th through July 5th, 2 free pop-ups, one in Dumbo, one at the Brooklyn Public Library. The Fader walked through the Dumbo space and described it as a museum/store hybrid. Walls lined with vinyl, TVs running archival footage of a young Hov, staff quietly slipping people a free reissue of an old mixtape like it was contraband. Then the world got bigger than the storefront. The Brooklyn Public Library issued a commemorative Jay-Z library card. Yo, Mondami was on his job. Go Mayor. Marcy Projects, as the projects he's from, and put out a reading list that he curated himself. So you can study the inputs that built the man. Rock Nation partnered with Google Maps to pin the real locations from his come up. iHeartRadio aired his Hall of Fame speech at midnight, and it all crescendos into 3 nights at Yankee Stadium. Now, watch what he actually did here strategically. He took a 30-year-old album and turned it into a navigable space. A library card makes you a citizen of the myth. A curated reading list makes the mythology teachable. A Google Maps layer turns the entire city into the album's footnotes. And the museum framing? Well, that's the move that lets him sell a $1,500 collector's crate to people who could stream the same songs for free. Because once it's an artifact, it carries a premium that product never could. This is brand as place. He is not selling you nostalgia. He is selling you residency inside a story he wrote 30 years ago. So why does it feel like watching somebody hang a chandelier in a house with a cracked, load-bearing wall? Well, that crack has a name. And it's a retailer. The 30th anniversary edition of Reasonable Doubt, a $40 white vinyl with exclusive artwork, is a Target exclusive. And here's the context that turns that from a footnote into a fault line. In early 2025, the first days of the second Trump administration, Target rolled back several of its diversity, equity, and inclusion commitments. Organizers launched a nationwide boycott starting February 1st. A parallel Target fast ran during Lent, the retailer's traffic sagged for most of the year, and the picture got muddy this spring. One pastor, I think his name is Jamal Bryant, announced his fast had ended, while the original organizers said the broader boycott was never his to call off. But strip away the confusion, and the bottom line is simple. The boycott is still active. Black organizers are, right now, asking people not to spend at Target.
Very sad story. The black delegation should take this up immediately. Jay-Z has decided to partner with Target. Now, need I remind you that when race relations were in question with the NFL and Colin Kaepernick, well, NFL got Jay-Z. And Jay-Z told us it was time to stand up. And he was going to be a co-owner or something. And he ended up being a glorified DJ. And then Target, we have our issue with Target. Okay. Our dear sister, Senator Nina Turner, has come on the show, talked about it. My boycott is live and active against Target because of their treatment of making promises to black folk and not delivering on them after the killing, the murder of George Floyd. Very simple. Very simple. Now Target has grabbed Jay-Z in a new partnership.
And into that exact moment, the most powerful black man in the music business made his most personal album a Target exclusive. Now, here's where I need you to be sharp with me, all right? Because the lazy critique is an exclusive, is a betrayal. Oh my God, I can already hear you guys going crazy. And that's not quite it though. Retail exclusives for milestone reissues are routine, y'all. It's a retail thing. That's not the real problem, so calm that part down. The real critique is more strategic than that. By putting his name and his most sacred title, his Bible of his career, if you will, on Target as the exclusive front door, he helped that retailer do the one thing money can't easily buy: repair its standing with the very black consumers it alienated. Without Target having to actually restore anything it took away, they do no work, just affiliated. Jay-Z becomes the bridge back into the building people were boycotting. And the receipts, oh yeah, that makes it a lot worse, not better. Target reported first quarter sales up almost 7%, traffic well above expectations. A defender hears that and says, see, the boycott's over. Black people are back, no harm. But a strategist, now we hear something colder, that most brands associated with black ownership just helped a retailer book a number it can wave around as proof it survived black anger. So Jay-Z didn't break the boycott, but he definitely gave its collapse a soundtrack. It's called Reasonable Doubt. Okay, if this were the only time, all right, fine. But one contradiction is an incident. But this is a pattern now. And a repeated contradiction is not a one-off incident. It's a brand position, whether you meant to take it or not. 2019, the NFL. While huge swaths of Black America were boycotting the league for blackballing Colin Kaepernick, Rock Nation signed on to help program the Super Bowl halftime show. And Hov's framing was, and I quote, "I think we've moved past kneeling. It's time to go into actionable items," which read to a lot of people like a man declaring the protest over exactly as he stepped through the door it pried open. Put them side by side. NFL, Barclays, Target, and one question runs straight through all three. Ownership. But for whom? Because here's the thing I won't take from him. He genuinely rewrote how hip-hop talks about equity and masters and generational wealth. That shift is completely real, and it's his. He can own that. But every single time ownership and solidarity have collided in public, the business has won. That's not a smear. That's 3 data points pointing in the same direction. Now the harder layer. And I'm going to be very, very careful here because this one requires precision and it also requires fairness. You know, for an artist like Jay-Z, brand equity isn't built on margins alone. It's built on authenticity capital. That's accumulated belief that the man and the myth are the same man. And reasonable doubt is the deed to that belief. Songs like Can't Knock the Hustle is literally a thesis statement that nobody can question how he gets his money. The entire world he's building this summer runs on the premise that he is exactly who he said he was in 1996, which is why the executive at the very top of the empire is an exposure most analysts politely skip. Desiree Perez has run Roc Nation as CEO since the end of 2019. By every account, she's an elite operator. She is also, according to reporting from the New York Daily News and other outlets, someone who, after a 1994 cocaine conspiracy arrest, cooperated with the federal government. She wore wires, helped the DEA break up major operations. She did probation later and served 9 months for a parole violation, and in January 2021, she received a full pardon from Donald Trump on his last day in office. Now, let's hold that up against the source code of the brand. The culture Reasonable Doubt helped canonize runs on one nearly inviolable commandment, and it is not subtle. Cooperation is informing, and it's a cardinal sin. It's the thing the entire mythology of the corner is organized against. So when the CEO of the house that Jay-Z built carries a documented history as a cooperating witness, and the legal closure of that chapter came by way of a Donald Trump pardon, I mean, you have to think about the value collision sitting in that organizational chart. And this isn't me reaching, by the way. The questions come from the inside culture. Damon Dash, his own Rockefeller co-founder, said publicly back in 2015 he was wary of businesses tied to that history. And when the pardon dropped, veteran DJs openly asked for answers. Now, be fair with me. Perez served her sentence. She took public accountability and she spent years on criminal justice reform, the Reform Alliance to be exact, alongside Meek Mill. And people are allowed to change. The entire moral architecture of reform depends on the belief that they can change. But here's the uncomfortable part, and it's a brand strategy point, not a moral one. Brand strategy doesn't run on what's fair. It runs on what's coherent, and the street code that gives Can't Knock the Hustle its power does not have an asterisk that reads unless she became a valued executive later. When I say the streets don't respect a cooperator, understand me. That is not my verdict on a human being, but it is the operating logic of the symbolic system Jay-Z chose to build his empire on top of. He spent 30 years drawing power from the street codes. And the contradicting is what happens when the code meets the organizational chart of Roc Nation. That's the seam in the structure, and the audience feels it, even when they can't name it. So, here's the framework that ties all of it together, and it's the spine of my whole book. Every brand runs on 3 forces in tension. I borrow the structure of the psyche to map them. The id. The id is raw appetite. Get the bag. Most efficient route. Any retailer necessary. The superego is your stated values. Own the block. Uplift the culture. Build black equity. And the ego? That's the public-facing brand. The thing that has to reconcile the two. Live in front of an audience. Jay-Z's id and his superego are at open war. And this entire rollout, the museum, the library cards, the stadium, is the ego trying to referee in real time. The candlelit cathedral of black ownership is the superego. The Target exclusive is the id. The reading list out of Marcy is the superego. A Trump pardon cooperating witness in the CEO chair is also the id. And world building is the ego's most expensive tool. Which brings us to the law. The one line I want you to leave with. You cannot outbuild a contradiction. No museum is big enough. No stadium is loud enough. No activation budget is large enough because the audience experiences the contradiction emotionally long before they articulate it intellectually. By the time they can explain why they feel uneasy, the equity has already drained out the seam. And here's the detail that proves it was a choice and not a constraint. The smallest, most damning fact in this entire story, a standard, non-Target edition was selling through his own store the entire time. I mean, he had a different front door for purchasing. But he chose the one inside the boycott in utilizing Target. And in branding, a contradiction you choose is a value statement you have now made. Now, let me argue against myself because a take that can't survive its opposition isn't worth much. The defense is real. Retail exclusives are indeed normal, and artists aren't boycott enforcement officers. Let's be real about it, right? They're here to get to the bag. But a non-Target edition did exist. Desiree Perez paid her debt, and she does do the reform work. And the album's cultural weight arguably outranks one retailer's politics. And the coldest defense of all, it might just work. If that vinyl sells out and Yankee Stadium is roaring, as I think it will be, Jay-Z will have proven again that at his altitude, credibility and commerce are different currencies. You can spend one to bank the other. Now that's a real strategy. He's run it before, but it works commercially and it costs you something durable are not opposites. They're the entire tension. Authenticity capital drains slowly and silently, and you usually only find out the account was empty the moment you reach for belief and it isn't there. So here's where I land the plane. Jay-Z spent this summer proving he is the single best world builder hip-hop has ever produced. The archive is real. The architecture is a masterclass. I'm not talking 1 inch. I'm talking a whole mile. And I'm not taking none of that from him. And he's left the front door of that cathedral popped open to the exact retailer his community is boycotting, with a pardoned cooperator holding the keys to the strategy. But the world he built is breathtaking. I mean, just look at all the activations. It's awesome. The question the streets are quietly asking, though, is whether he still lives in it, or whether somewhere between Marcy and Target, the man finally became the business, full-time for good. I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman. That used to sound like a flex. This summer, for a lot of people, it started to sound like a confession. If you want the full framework, the id, ego, superego of brand power, and how to spot the seam before cracks for your own brand, that's the entire spine of my book, Brand Power Direct 101, Harness the Psychology of Your Brand. That book is coming out this summer. I promise you, it will not disappoint. It's going to give you the complete framework of how to think like a brand strategist through the lens of psychology. If this video gave you a new lens, please subscribe. This is what we do here. We read the culture like a brand. I'm Rhett. This is The Wash Strategist, and I'll see you in the next one.